Alright, so apparently, businesses in Tennessee are going to be forced to put signs announcing that they serve transgender customers. And this is really weird. This creates a very strange reverse situation for trans people in Tennessee, and I'm going to try to explain that here in a bit so it makes sense. But let's go ahead and read the article first, and then we'll try to contextualize things a bit here, okay? So, according to the article, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has signed one of the cruelest anti-trans laws in the nation, which will require businesses and public buildings to warn cisgender customers that they serve transgender people like any customer. It is the second bill restricting transgender public accommodation signed into law recently by the governor, and the fourth specifically targeting transgender people. Now, in what way is this limiting things? Let's go ahead and click on the bill. Take a look at it. So it says here, public buildings, as enacted, requires a public or private entity or business that operates a building or facility open to the general public to post a notice at the entrance of each public restroom of the entity or business's policy of allowing a member of either biological sex to use any public restroom within the building or facility. Now, this is a little different than what the wording of the article says, but let's continue. If the entity or business maintains such a policy, it has to put that in. Okay, so basically, let's say that you're a Walmart, right? And you allow trans people into your bathroom. This bill basically makes it to where you have to post that you will allow trans people into your bathrooms. Now, I feel like this is not really helpful. The intent of this might actually be a little hidden. If they put up a sign that said, no trans allowed, then everyone would understand what that means, and everybody would come in and automatically try to reject the bill, right? Even bigots don't like other bigots. Everybody likes to virtue signal to some extent. However, if it is instead camouflaged as equality, where some businesses are legally obligated to say some form of, we openly serve transgender people, which of course, the only areas in which this even matters is in sports and in the bathroom. Like, those are the sports, bathrooms, and puberty blockers. Those are the fronts where people are having these conversations now, right? Conservatives are largely having these conversations all about bathrooms, sports, and puberty blockers. This is one of those three areas. There's nothing about being trans that prohibits you from being able to sit down in a restaurant and order food. But if that restaurant prohibits you from going to the right bathroom, which, by the way, statistically, when trans people are allowed to go into the correct bathroom for them, not the correct bathroom that some bigot decides, that lowers their rate of sexual assault in those bathrooms. Not them assaulting people, other people assaulting them. When you support bills that force trans people to go into the wrong bathrooms, you support them getting assaulted, because that is the direct result of those bills. Anyways, by camouflaging this stuff as equality, by pointing out that, you openly serve transgender people, it's a little more obtuse, right? It seems like it's straightforward, but it's not. It's the same stuff that businesses would do in Germany when they were required to admit with big old signs that they were either Jewish-run or Jewish-owned. So, let's say that you are business A, and you're in Tennessee, which is very, very conservative. Tennessee is a very red state. And you have one of these signs that says, we openly serve transgender people. Well, if your general area is rural, thereby probably red, probably very conservative, then what's going to happen is you're going to lose business. There's going to be people who are going to look at you and go, well, I'm not going to support that business. What they're doing is an affront to God. God decided when he determined what a restroom would be, he determined the divine nature of the restroom, and that only my manly ass would be able to take a deuce in the men's restroom. Never Never will I allow someone else to take a deuce on my holy throne. Some random notion like that, right? Which means businesses are going to be de-incentivized from allowing trans people who are largely going to be the minority in these areas. They're de-incentivized from allowing them to go into the, quote, proper restroom. And again, as enacted, this requires any public or private entity or business that operates a building or facility open to the general public, so this includes restaurants, gyms, etc., to post a notice at the entrance of each public restroom in the entity's business. Trans people are the minority in the United States, and they're no less a minority when you get into super conservative areas. So if you've got a population that is 60 to 70% conservatives, and then you maybe 20 to 30% progressives, and a fraction of that group, a fraction of that other group is trans, and you're a business having to make the decision over who you're going to cater to more, you're likely going to cater to the majority, because that is the financially stable decision to do, especially as we just got out of a lot of lockdowns for the COVID pandemic that's been happening and is still going on. There are plenty of businesses that have been hurting desperately because of that. And what are they going to do? Do you think a business that can barely get people in the door and can barely hold on to workers because they can barely get enough people in the door right now, do you think those businesses are going to actively decide to limit their customer base? This is framed in a way that makes it look like it's businesses have to point out that they are inviting to trans people, and that's a good thing. But if we look at this consequentially, the result of this is that there are businesses who are just simply not going to post. And this has been assigned to Public Chapter 43 by the Secretary of State. What it does not seem to list here is what happens to anyone who actually fails to adhere to these rules. Yeah, I'm not saying anywhere here what happens to a business that fails to adhere to these rules. There's no talk of fines or anything here, and we'll look at the article to see if it contextualizes it a little bit more. But hopefully I've made my point clear. Like, this is a thing that looks progressive on paper, and it's worded in such a way that people are not going to look at it and go, aha, that's transphobic, blah, 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 blah. This is worded in such a way where it sounds like it's protecting the rights of trans people. But because of that, it's going to affect them negatively. So it is the second bill restricting transgender public accommodations signed into law recently by the governor, and the fourth to specifically target transgender people. So the new Tennessee law requires any building or facility open to the general public that allows transgender people access to the bathroom to post a sign that reads, "This facility has a policy of allowing the use of restrooms by either biological sex, regardless of designation on the restroom." Governor Lee's decision to sign HB 1182 will cause real harm to transgender Tennesseans, Human Rights Campaign President Alfonso David said in an emailed statement. Denying transgender people the ability to access a bathroom consistent with their gender identity is degrading and dehumanizing and can have real health and safety consequences. Again, this one is true. The safety consequences thing we already went over earlier. Rates of sexual assault go up when, say, a trans woman is forced to go into a men's restroom because people won't let her go into the women's restroom because they're stupid. And I know there's going to be somebody in the chat who's like, actually, it's not that we're stupid, it's that we're just worried about our daughters getting assaulted. Look, if you're worried about your daughters getting assaulted, I understand, and I completely and totally agree that that is a problem. But here's the thing. You're working under the assumption that all trans people are, by the essential virtue of being trans, they are sexual assaulters, which does not bear out in the data and doesn't bear out in general. And two, there is no sign that you can put up somewhere that will prevent a rapist from doing what they want to do. I'm sorry. If just putting up a sign that said a trans person can't go in X bathroom is enough stop somebody who has ill intention from doing something, then why would we not just put up a no raping sign? We could just put up a no raping in this area. Raping isn't allowed here. Except it wouldn't be effective. It wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't dissuade anyone. Because somebody who's already planning on breaking the law there already doesn't care about the law where that's concerned. So, I'm just going to go ahead and preempt that point about bathrooms before somebody comes in and goes, you're in favor of people getting assaulted. No, statistically, I'm in favor of less people getting assaulted. That's why I'm supporting this. Not supporting this, I support people being able to go into the bathrooms that they choose. The Governor Lee and Tennessee lawmakers are determined to discriminate against the transgender community and roll back the clock on equality instead of focusing on real problems facing Tennesseans. Well, true. Trans people existing within your state is not a fucking problem. So to be clear, Tennessee residents will suffer economic, legal, and reputational consequences of these bills, and we will hold those who are indoctrinating hate into our laws accountable. The NCAA, 110 corporations, and major medical and child welfare organizations have spoken out against this year's onslaught of anti-trans legislation, including Tennessee's bills, which have been dubbed the State of Hate, or the Slate of Hate. The college athletics organization said that it expects hosts of their sporting events to be safe, healthy, and free of discriminations, and the corporations denounced the bills, saying that the bills will affect their complex decisions about where to invest and grow. Governor Lee also signed HB 529, a law requiring schools to notify parents of sexual orientation or gender identity are going to be mentioned in class 30 days in advance to give parents the ability to opt their children out so that they don't have to hear that LGBTQ people exist. Let's go ahead and look at that bill real quick. Okay, so you do not have the bill here. I expected it to link the same way that this one did. HB 529. Let's go ahead and look at that. Tennessee HB 529. Because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Okay, as enacted, requires an LEA or public charter school to notify a student's parent or guardian prior to commencing instruction of a sexual orientation or gender identity curriculum, permits a parent or guardian to excuse the parent or guardian's students from a sexual orientation or gender identity curriculum, and prohibits the LEA or charter school from penalizing an excused student. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this one as well. This one is also important for us to take note of, because if I frame this differently, you'll see why it's a problem. I'm sure there's somebody who's going to come in the comments about, what about the autonomy of the parent? Yep, fuck you, sit down, go back to class. All right? Listen to the words I'm saying. If we were to do this exact same thing to a similarly immutable aspect of the human condition, race, you would see there's a problem with this. If I were to write this bill and instead reword it as enacted, requires an LEA or public charter school to notify a student's parent or guardian prior to the commencing of instruction of a racial or historical context surrounding the topic of slavery curriculum, we permit a parent or guardian to excuse the parent or guardian student from any conversation or curriculum where we are going to discuss race and its effect on America. Well, there goes Black History Month. There goes talking about the slave trade as it existed in our country. There goes talking about the Trail of Tears. There goes talking about Abraham Lincoln in any way, shape, or form. You can now just pull kids away from hearing about any of this. And I'm sure somebody's going to come in with, again, the autonomy of the parent argument. You're deflecting if you are. This isn't about the autonomy of the parent. This is about taking education that is there to normalize the people you are going to encounter in everyday life, and parents going, no, 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 we're okay with hatred. We're okay with the bad stuff. We don't want to learn about how to be better. That's inconvenient. We'd rather stay in our old prejudices, and we would rather our children be grown up within those old prejudices as well. That is effectively what this is doing, except replace race with gender, which is a similarly socially constructed, however, also a similarly immutable characteristic of a human being. I do not get to choose my gender. I do not get to choose my race. The roles and the expectations and the preconceptions about race and gender and everything, the things that make those things up, are all socially enacted and constructed. These things are functionally, for the purpose of this demonstration, fairly identical. Careful, you're going to give a Republican somewhere ideas. They've probably already done that somewhere. Honestly, and people in the chat are saying that they did that to, they did that in Utah, apparently. I don't have information on that specifically, so I'm not going to comment on it. But it is important, if you are an American citizen, and especially if you're an American citizen who cares about trying to make the world a better place for your neighbors, for your children, it's probably a very good idea. Thank you very much for subscribing, AK Shoden. But it's probably a very good idea for you to pay attention to what bills are being enacted in your state when you get the chance to, because shit like this is happening. Remember the politicians who are voting on this. Remember the politicians who are voting yay on these bills. Because when it comes time to elect new ones, you'll know what to do. Yeet these people out of their seats as they have engaged in practices which ideally should earn them a vacancy. In the meantime, probably a good idea to get out and protest. Probably a good idea to do that. Why? Because that raises awareness. Because there are people who don't pay attention to stuff like this. And therefore will keep on re-electing the same schmucks they are comfortable with because they know the names, and a lot of people are more comfortable with the evil they understand than a new type of evil that they have not yet faced. But with all that said, that is stuff that's going on in Tennessee. Hopefully I've broken some of that down and made it a little more digestible to you guys. And if it was new, then hey, let me know in the comment section below if it's something you didn't know about already. With that said, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Please let me know what you thought in the comment section. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have not done so, since we are here together having this conversation, maybe try subscribing to Sunset City if you haven't already. If you want a break from politics and you want a conversation more about video games, then here you will find Game Apologist, Channel Pup, me, and, well, Wayne is Voss when he's not dead, where we talk about that. We talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, video games, and all that stuff. And if you have not subscribed to my secondary channel already, Neko Suris, I would highly recommend you do that as well, as this is the channel where I personally sit down and talk about video game stuff. I have conversations about what Nintendo is doing, conversations about Resident Evil 8, conversations about Sonic Adventure 2, all kinds of stuff. So if you're a fan of video game conversations, video game talks, then those are places you can go if you need a break from all the politics. And I would not blame you if you felt like you did. With all that said, though, everyone, thank you all for tuning in, and insert end of video tagline here.